Hey guys, and a very warm welcome to Simplilearn. In this video, we'll discuss some of the frequently asked questions in PHP interviews. Now, the questions are categorized in two sections, beginner and advanced questions. So, without any further ado, let us get started with the beginner questions. Now, the most basic question is, what is PHP? So PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor. It is a server-side scripting language that is embedded into HTML and is generally used for dynamic web development. PHP is also a very compatible language, that is, it also works efficiently with almost 20 different databases such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, etc. Next question, what is a session in PHP? Now, sessions in PHP are used to store data for users under a unique ID which can be then used across multiple web pages of a website. Next, what is peer in PHP? Now, peer stands for PHP Extension and Application Repository. It is a framework and repository for the reusable components. Focus on reusable components of PHP containing code snippets and libraries. Next, is PHP considered a case-sensitive language? So this is a very often asked questions in interviews. So PHP is partially case-sensitive since variables in PHP are case-sensitive while functions and user-defined functions are not. Next, name different types of data types in PHP. So different data types in PHP include integer, float, string, boolean, array, object, null, and finally resource. So there are total 8 different data types that exist in PHP. Next question, how is echo different from print? Now echo, it can output multiple strings at a time, while in case of print, it can output only a single string. Now echo does not have a return value, while print always returns 1. That is the reason that is echo is faster because it does not have to return a value, while print is slower in comparison to echo because it always returns a value. Now, as you can see, both of these commands echo and print are used in the exact same way. Next, what are the rules for naming a variable? Now there are certain rules which you have to follow or certain good coding practices which you have to follow while naming a variable in your PHP code. So variable name must always begin with underscore or a letter. So it cannot begin with a number or a special character for that matter. Next, variable names can include numbers but not special characters. So suppose you want to name your variable number 123. So you can use this variable but you cannot use number @123 since special characters are not included. Next, a variable in PHP is declared using this $sign followed by the variable name. Now, as you can see, this is how we declare a variable $my_variable. You can also put a number in between or at the end while naming a variable, just not at the start. Next, name some popular PHP frameworks. So some of the popular PHP frameworks include Symfony, CodeIgniter, CakePHP, and Laravel. Moving on, how to check if a defined variable is null or not. So isAdd function is used to check if the defined variable has any value or not. So to use this, suppose you have this block of code in front of you. So suppose you want to check if this x variable that you've defined is null or not. So what you do is you put the isAdd function inside the if condition and it will return true if it's not null, while it will return false if it is a null value. Since it is not null, it returns true and we can display echo as variable x is not null, while in the case of variable y, it is a null value since so the if condition will be false and it will not display anything. Next, how are objects in PHP passed? So objects in PHP are always passed by value, not by reference. Next question, how to display output directly to the browser? Now, in cases you want to display your output directly onto the browser while running a piece of code, you can use these special tags to display an output directly to the browser. Now, as you may notice, these tags does not contain the PHP written. You can use them directly and replace PHP with an equal to sign followed by what you want to display and end it with a question mark and a closing bracket. Moving on, what is define function used for in PHP? Now define is used to declare a constant in PHP. Also, in contrast to the variables, there is no need for a $sign before declaring a constant since the value of a constant does not change. Now, this is how you can use the define function to declare a constant. Suppose you want to declare the value of pi as 3.14 throughout your PHP code and which cannot be changed. So we can use define for that. Next question is related to this question since what is constant function in use for in PHP then? So constant function returns the value of a constant. It is not used to define a constant but it returns the value of a constant. So suppose you define a function constant using this define function and you want to return this value, you can use this constant function for that. Next, is multiple inheritance supported in PHP? So PHP only supports single level inheritance, which means a class can be extended from only one class using the keyword extended. Next, what are the different types of loops in PHP? So PHP consists of a while loop, a do while loop, a for loop, and finally a for each loop. So PHP consists of total 4 loops. Next question, how to concatenate two strings in PHP? Now, two strings can be easily concatenated using the dot operator in PHP. Now to do that, I'll show you with the help of a code. Suppose you want to concatenate or join these two strings, str1 hello guys, and the second string would be and welcome to Simplilearn, and want to display these strings together. So to do that, you need to use this dot operator in echo. As you can see, this dot operator, so first you write the name of the first string, then followed by the dot operator. I've given this space, and then the next dot operator because this is also considered as a string, and then the third string variable, and this is how you concatenate two strings. Next question, what is the use of function num ar arguments? Now this function, as you can see, is used to return the number of arguments passed in a function. So suppose you pass a certain number of arguments in a function and want to know how many values or arguments were passed. You can use this function for that. So suppose in this sample code you want to know how many arguments were passed in this sample function. So to do that, we declare a variable number of arguments and we will equal it to the function number arguments. Now we will display it, and this sample has passed 3 arguments, so the output would be 3. Moving on, what are super global variables in PHP? Now some predefined variables in PHP are known as super global variables because they are always accessible from any function, file or class regardless of the scope. So in all, they are globally accessible. So suppose you write a piece of code and you declare a variable inside it, it would be a local variable and could be accessed only in that part of the code. But in case of superglobal variable, they are accessible throughout the entire code. They include global, server, request, post, get, files, env, cookie, and session. Moving on, how to invoke single line and multi-line comments. Now a single line comment in PHP can be made using this hash followed by the comment or double slash followed by the comment. While in case of multi-line comments, you can use this hash star and write your comments in multiple lines and enclose it with a star and slash. What I'm going to do now is I am going to show you the use of these comments in actual VS Code. Now let us take this block of code for example. Now suppose you want to add a single line comment after this variable. So what you will do is you can use this double slash. This is a variable. Also you can use slash. This is also a variable. So this is a single line comment. Now if you try to write something else after this in the next line, it will take it as part of the code, not part of the comment. So what do you do when you need to write multiple lines of comment? So suppose you need to write 2-3 lines about this line of code. What you will do is you will use a slash star. Now write the comment. This is displaying Simplilearn. So this is a 3-line comment which you can end simply by star and a slash. This is how you write single line and multi-line comments. Now let's move on to the next question, that is name some common applications of PHP. So some of the most commonly used PHP applications are system functions, form handling. So PHP is very commonly used to handle the forms that you see on the web pages. CRUD tasks. Now CRUD tasks are create, read, update and delete. So when you will be working with databases, this is a very important part of using databases, that is CRUD, and PHP is used very commonly in that. Next, accessing cookies, variables and set cookies. And finally, data encryption. PHP provides security through some of its frameworks, which can be used and is used very commonly throughout a lot of websites. So now that we have gone through the beginner level questions that are frequently asked in PHP interviews, let us now move on to the advanced level questions. So the first question would be, how can you execute a PHP script from the command line? Now, a PHP script from a command line can be executed by opening the command line, and inside the command line you have to specify the name of the script or name of the PHP file that you want to run. Suppose you want to run a php_script.php, so you type in the name of the PHP script that you want to run, and that particular PHP script will be executed. Next, differentiate between a dollar variable and $$ variable. So what is the difference between the two? Now in case of a single dollar variable, it is a simple variable that is simply used to store data. So as we discussed earlier, it is a variable that we define to store different data types, that is integer, float, strings, etc. While a $$ variable is a reference variable of variable. So this is used to reference already existing variables. Now to use or to understand how these two work, you can see this particular block of code here. Now in this code, what you need to focus on is this is a simple variable hello, which contains the string welcome to Simplilearn, and we have defined another variable as var, which contains the string hello. Now in this echo, as you can notice, what we are doing is we are using this. Also before that, you need to notice is this is the same string as the name of this variable. So first we are displaying this variable and then we are referencing this variable here. So what it is doing is it is referencing the value to another variable. So hello variable is being referenced. So when you execute this block of PHP script, what you get the output is hello, since this is the variable hello, and after that what you'll get is welcome to Simplilearn, since this variable is a reference to this variable. Next, differentiate between get and post method. Now, get method is used to submit form data, while post method is also used for the same feature. So the difference between them is get method sends data as part of PHP page URL. Web page URL, while a post method sends data through HTTP header. In get, the data, since the data is being sent through the URL, it is displayed in the URL of the web page, so it is not secure, while in case of post method, it is a secure form of data transfer. Hence, when developing a website for some security purposes, usually we prefer post method. Next up, how to connect to a database using a PHP script. Now suppose if you are asked this question in an interview, what you need to do is you need to just write this block of code and explain it to the interviewer. Now suppose we have a PHP script and we want to connect it to a database. What we need to do is we will create 3 different variables, that is server name, username and password. Now what we are going to do is we will create another variable con that will be used to connect it, and then we'll use the mysqli functions which will then pass these variables to create a connection. So these variable values are localhost username password. These are the default values. Now to check if the connection is connected, what we are going to do is we will use an if condition. If the con variable gets an connect error, we will display a error message, that is connection failed. If not, we will display connected successfully. Now as you can see here, these names can be the name of the server that you're trying to connect. I have used localhost username password for the default values. You can use the name of the database that you're trying to connect your PHP script to. Next up, what does final class and final method mean in PHP? Now a final class in PHP means that the class cannot be extended, while a final method means that it cannot be overridden. Now as you can see in this block of code, we have used the final keyword for a class and the final keyword for a function. Now suppose this final class is being inherited by this child class. What the program will return is an error, because once you use this final keyword, this class cannot be inherited. And similarly, suppose this function is trying to be overridden by this part of the code, it cannot be because we have used the final function. Next question, differentiate between function overloading and overriding. Now function overloading, the same function is used for different purposes based on the number of arguments inside the function, while in case of function overriding, the same name and same argument function is used in parent and child class respectively to change the behavior of parent class method. Now let me show you and demonstrate the difference with an example. So let us look at this code. So suppose you have a function named showTitle, which does contain a single parameter and displays, when called upon using this parameter, displays function1. Now if you want to use the same name of the function for a different purpose, what you can do is you can increase or change the number of parameters inside the function. That is, it now contains 2 parameters. So when the same function is called using 2 parameters, it will function differently and display function overloading. So this is how function overloading works. Next, from this piece of code we can understand function overriding. Suppose you display a function demo in a base class and you want to override this demo function inside the derived class. So what you do is you make another function with the same name inside the derived class with some different properties. As you can see, it displays something different. Now you create an object for the base class, and when you use this base class object to call this demo function, you can use the properties of this function here. While if you create another object, that is object 2 for the derived class, and you use this object to call upon the same demo function, you are overriding this base class demo function that was inherited. Instead, what it will use is it will use the properties of the derived demo function. So that is how you overload or override a class function in PHP. Now let's move on to the next question, that is differentiate between equal to and triple equal operator. So a double equal operator is generally used to check if the value of two operands are equal or not. It is generally used in case of conditional statements, while a triple equals to operator performs a type safe comparison, which means that it will only return true if both operands have the same type and the same value. So you can understand this more with this piece of code. So suppose in this case, since they both are equal, it will return true. While in this case, they both have the same type, hence it will return true. Now let us check this equals to. So since they both are 1, and in PHP it will display as true since they are equal, while when you are type checking, that is you are checking if they're equal with the same type and same value, it will display a false since one is an integer and the other one is a string value. Also, if you check two different strings with the type safe, it will also display true. Next question, how does exception handling work in PHP? So when an exception is thrown, code following the statement will not be executed, and PHP will attempt to find the first matching catch block. So if an exception is not caught, a PHP fatal error will be issued with an uncaught exception. An exception can be thrown and caught within PHP. So what we do is we use this try and catch method to try the code, and if an error occurs, we can catch. If an exception occurs, we can throw it, and the catch function will catch the exception. And if we do not include the catch function, it will result in a fatal error. Next up, differentiate between require and include. Now require, if a required file is not found, it will throw a fatal error and stop the code execution, while in case of include, if an essential file is not found, it will produce a warning and still execute the remaining scripts. So as you can see, both of these include and require are used in the exact same way with different functions. Next up, explain different types of errors in PHP. Now PHP consists of mainly three errors: notice, warning, and a fatal error. Now notice is a non-critical error, which means that something minor went wrong during execution and a lot of times you just don't pay attention to it. A warning is a critical error. Now it is given in condition where suppose an include function that we just discussed in the previous question went to retrieve a non-existent file. So suppose you use an include function and the file does not exist, it will display a warning. And the final is a fatal error. So it is a critical error resulting in termination of the code. So as we discussed in the try and catch part of the question, if an exception is thrown and we do not have a catch function for it, it will display a fatal error which will return in termination of the code. Next question, how to call a function by reference. So ampersand sign is used to call a function by reference. Now in case of reference, the actual value is modified if the value passed inside the function is also modified. While in case of value, the value of the original value does not change. So this piece of code here is an example of how you can call a function by reference. Here, as you can see, this ampersand sign will call this function by reference, and any changes made in the variables here will affect the original ones. Next question, create a singleton class in PHP. So how do we create a singleton class in PHP? Before that, let's have a look at what is a singleton class. Now, a singleton class in PHP is a class that can have only one object and hence provides only a single point of access. So generally in class, you can create as many objects as you want, and it will in turn create different access points into that block of code. So in a singleton class, you can only create a single object, hence singleton. So this piece of code, as you can notice, is used to create a singleton class. Now, to create a singleton class, you need to have the constructor function private. Now here, as you can see, a singleton class is created using this private construct, and it then checks if there's only one instance created, and if it is, it functions properly and displays initialize only once. Next question, how to encrypt a password using PHP. So PHP can be used for encryption techniques. Now the password underscore hash function creates a hash password from the password string using hashing algorithm. So suppose you create a password string and enter your password as password@123, and you put it inside the password hash function. So what it will generate is, we are echoing this generated hash. So what it will generate is this. So this is random. It changes every time you generate the password since it is encrypted, and same when you pass this password to the database using hashing algorithm, even in the database the password will not be visible. So your data is secure. Next question, mention different sorting functions for arrays in PHP. Now let us understand this question in the VS Code. So PHP consists of different sorting functions which you can use to sort a given array automatically. So if you want to sort an array in ascending order, what you need to do is use this sort function. So it will sort this array in ascending order. Now if you want to sort it in descending order, use rsort, that is reverse sort. Similarly, suppose you want to sort an array in terms of value in ascending order. So you need to use a sort function, that is this. So in terms of value, what in terms of value means is, suppose in a given array, there are keys and values. So it will sort the array based on the values, that is this 22, 27 and 37. So the array will be the same since the values are already sorted. Now if you want to sort the array in according to key, that is this, you can use ksort, that is key sort function that is provided in PHP. So in case of key sort, what it does is it will sort the array in key, that is the first one would be D, that is Duke, second M, Mac, and the third R, that is raw. Now if you want to sort this array in descending order in terms of value, you use, instead of a sort, you use a reverse sort. Similarly, if you want to sort an array in terms of key in descending, you use k, instead of k sort, kr sort, that is k reverse sort. So these are the different sorting functions that are inbuilt into PHP. Moving on, what will be the output of the following code? Now if this code is given, let me give you some time and try to pause this video and think of what will be the output of the following code. So the output of this code will be 21, 21 or 21, 21. How did it happen? But before that, if you got it correct, congratulations. But if you want to understand it, see, a is a variable that contains the value 1, while a b is a variable that is getting the value of a variable through reference. Now, we make changes in the b variable with 2 followed by this variable again, which is calling the value of a by reference. So if we make changes here, we also make changes in the value of a. Now, if we display this, since the value of a is already changed by reference, it will display 2, 1, that is the value here. And again, since the value of b is already 2, 1, it will again display 2, 1. Moving on, what are construct function and destruct function in PHP? So a constructor or construct function is automatically invoked when a new object of a class is created and then can be used to initialize value in class. So when you create an object for a class, a constructor function is automatically invoked. But this can also be, so it does not contain any value when it is invoked. But you can also use this construct function to initialize some properties, to give some properties to the class, which will act as its default properties if nothing or no new properties are given to the class. Next is a destruct. Now a destruct is automatically invoked when an object of a class is destructed. Suppose you end the part of the code of a class, you are destroying the object. When you're ending the piece of code, a destruct function is automatically invoked to clean up the resources. Next is how can PHP and JavaScript interact. Now PHP and JavaScript cannot directly interact with each other since PHP is a server-side scripting language while JavaScript is a client-side language. But there is a way that these two wonderful languages can interact with each other. So we can swap variables since PHP can produce JavaScript code to be implemented by the browser. So yes, you can produce JavaScript code from PHP which can then be implemented by a browser, and then it is probable to pass those precise variables back to PHP via a URL. Next question is, explain type hinting in PHP. Now in PHP, type hinting is used to specify the expected data type, that is array, object, interface, etc. for an argument in a function declaration. Now during a function call, suppose if arguments does not match the expected data type, the runtime will display an error and that is a fatal error, and the program will then terminate. Now in this code here, what we are doing is we are type hinting. So this code is for string type hinting and this code is for integer type hinting. Now if these particular set of functions that have already specified the type they are expecting does not receive the same type of variable inside them, the program will return in a fatal error and it will terminate. So moving on to our final question of this video, write a class. So yes, this is an assignment, a kind of assignment for you guys. So what you need to do is you need to write a class to solve the following question which I'm going to say. So implement a class named basketball. We all like basketball, right? So implement a class named basketball with an attribute named baskets. So you have to create an attribute named baskets and initialize it to 0 as the starting position, and then create a method named score. Now when the score method is invoked, the baskets must increase by 1. So let's see the solution now. So this is how you create a class that is basketball. Now inside this class, what we are going to do is we are going to initialize the number of baskets, that is this variable, as 0 as the starting position. So to do that, what we're going to do is we will be using construct function as we discussed to initialize some default properties for the class. So this construct function is used to initialize this baskets variable to 0. Now suppose we do not call this function score, which is increasing the number of baskets. The default value will be displayed as 0 every time. Now suppose we invoke this score function every time a basket is scored. This will increase the number of baskets by 1. So this is pretty simple, and this is how you create a simple class which will perform the following question. So thank you so much guys for watching this video. Hope you all liked it, and if you did, do hit the like button and subscribe to Simplilearn for more such content. Stay safe and keep learning.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.